Hi, and welcome to the 2023 February DAC trainings. My name is Chris Williams, and today I'm going to be talking to you about SDRR. SDRR is the Student Data Review and Roster application, and I have a wonderful partner, Ben Riley, who is helping me with the presentation today. So let's begin. Let's let you know about what we're going to be doing with our agenda today. We're going to talk about some of the SDRR spring timelines for you. We're also going to talk to you about a little bit about Sandbox, the student status, SDRR for your 100-day students. We're going to talk about district test collections, rosters, and some valuable resources for you at the very end of our presentation today. Now, the reason why we get in the purpose of our data quality for SDRR and why it's very important that you get your rosters right. Also, when it comes to data review, that you get that information correct as well, is to get ready for public reporting in the school report card that happens every fall. And so we always want to make sure that all of our demographic information is correct. We also want to make sure that our 100-day students that are accountable to us are correct. And if they're not 100 days to us, that we have coded them to where they need to go. And also, if you need to file any non-participations, that you can do that during rosters and also during data review as well in the fall. So that's why it's very important that we always make sure that we get that information correct. And then that way in the school report card, everything is good to go, and everyone is excited when the data comes out and your data is correct. We do also want to make sure that kind of reiterate some of the things that happened during the year is SDRR at a glance. So on this slide, it just starts from January and goes all the way through the year and kind of gives you what you're supposed to be doing at SDRR at different times. So during this time, in January that you're to be filing non-participations while it's open in SDRR for access. And then that will close down, and then we will get ready for while this is still going, we will also get into February, and we'll get into graduation rate data for cohort. And so you want to make sure that your data is correct in Infinite Campus. And then in mid-March, you'll be getting into where you'll enter in your test window collections and go through that with your setting your elementary, middle, and high school as a district assessment coordinator. And then in mid to late April, then our spring rosters open for our demographics. And also your 100-day accountability will be pre-populated for you during that time in spring rosters, be able to mark accommodations at that time. And then also for your IEP and EL students. Then in June, you'll look at cohort data in SDRR and fix any issues in Infinite Campus. And then in August, we give you one more last look at data review. That's the last time that you'll be able to make your individual student changes. That always happens in August. And usually at the beginning of August is usually when that happens. So be looking for those. We usually put out communications. We put out communications when SDRR opened for access to file non-participations back in January. And we also have that in our important dates and also on our DAC calendars as well when these things happen. So any type of thing that is going to happen with SDRR will either be put into a special DAC email or into a regular DAC email on Mondays. And we'll have that information within that time. Also, we put those important dates. And like I said, don't forget to look at your DAC calendars as a district assessment coordinator, because that'll be very important for you. to have that information as well. And then the last thing that we do for SDRR is that we have, after it's publicly reported, then you will go back and be able to go into SDRR after public release and correct any individual students. But that's after it's publicly reported. So you want to try to get everything done throughout the year. So that means and early as possible. That way it's less work that you have to do in the fall. Now let's look at some tentative timelines for you. That, as I said, those are tentative. We always tell you those are tentative because, you know, things could change. Weather could also be a factor, or other things could be a factor of getting SDRR open at different times. So right now, your access and alternate access rosters are open from January 5th through March 10th. That will be the last time that you'll, during this phase, to be able to file any non-participations at this point. And you know that during this time that you also have to add any student if you want to file a non-participation only during this time. And so you would have to put in the SSID number. And when you get into SDRR, you would add the SSID. That information will be located. It would go back to Infinite Campus to locate the information for the student, and then pre-populate that student for you in SDRR. You want to make sure that you're only doing that for non-participations only. So if you've got a student who is not going to participate in access or alternate access, that you make sure you get that done during this time. Then that will close. And then on March 14th through the 30th, you will have the district test window collection that I was talking to you about on the earlier slide. That you'll go as a DAC, you'll be able to go in and put your elementary, middle, and high school, and we'll have a screenshot of what that'll look like further in our presentation. Also, this is for our district assessment coordinators only. Our building assessment coordinators, as a BAC, you'll be able to see the information, but you will not be able to enter those test windows. And those test windows is one test window for elementary, middle, and high school. And then we will close that down on the 30th. And then we move into our spring rosters. And that usually opens late April and stays open to mid-June. And so we will be sending out specific dates of when those will be coming out closer to time. Now, SDRR highlights. We're just gonna go over some things with you. You're gonna, of course, you know, for you to be able to train your staff on how to do the functionalities of SDRR, we have a sandbox. And so you always want to make sure that you are in sandbox when you are training your staff in the district of how to use SDRR. Another important thing is the I need help. I need help button is when you log into SDRR, it is on every one of the screens. You click on that, it takes you to additional information that'll help you for that particular assessment that is happening at the time. Also, it gives you some things about accountability. It also helps you with some tutorials too as well that we have that'll walk you through. We'll have some screencasts that will help you of how to, you know, add students, how to delete students from your rosters during spring, and then it'll also help you how to file non-participations, etc. So be looking underneath that I need help button because it is accessible and ready for you to be able to get to that particular thing. Also, during rosters, it tells you when it's going to open and when we can accept, you know, any new tickets. That if any changes you make, that process still has remained the same. And then also data review will happen in late summer, early fall. Now, there are two functions when we get to SDRR, is that we always have the first function of SDRR is always in the spring, in the winter and the spring, and that's with our rosters. You'll notice that we've already went through access and alternate access by the time we get to the spring rosters, but you'll see them one more time. And those students will be pre-populated during this time, as well as your AKSA, your KSA, alternate access, and your post-secondary readiness. And also cohort graduation rate will also be available on a separate tab as well with your spring rosters. And then the other function of SDRR is to look at your data one more last time, your individual student data, and be able to correct that for the same things that you did in the spring, that you'll be able to make some changes in the fall. And now do want to say, though, for cohort in the fall for data review, it is view only. So those changes have to be made back in Infinite Campus. And also in the spring, when you make changes in SDRR, you also want to make sure that there will be some tabs that you have to change in Infinite Campus, and we'll talk about that later on in the presentation. So be looking for that. And we always want to reiterate, we always put in the grade levels for this, as well as letting you know what are the functions of SDRR, both for spring rosters and for data review. Now, some important features of SDRR that we also always want to tell you about is that, the connection of SDRR to Infinite Campus. That's always important for demographics. Also, we have the large buttons on the homepage, which tells you what sections of SDRR are currently open. Also, we have the announcements. When you log in to the welcome page, homepage of SDRR, you can click on the roster that you're wanting to get to, and it takes you straight down to the student listings, the ticket listings, and the task list for each of our assessments. Also up at the top, it also gives you your announcements, what's opening, how long it's going to be opening. Also gives you some important things of how to get to, if you need assistance with accountability, etc. That is also up in that resource. Also, if when you go in to fill out any non-participations for your students, you always want to make sure that you've gone to the KDE Forms page and have downloaded the medical non-participation, have filled that out correctly, and before you go in and upload it into SDRR. And it does require that you have all the necessary signatures on it. Please make sure that you fill it out correctly, because sometimes that will determine, if you put it in and it shows you're in progress, and we go to take a look at it and you're missing something, that one of the reasons why it could be denied is because you don't have it filled out correctly. Also, make sure you have the current forms for your medical non-participations, etc., when you're filing non-participations. That's always important. And then once it is approved, it will take off the in progress status and change it to the approved. If you're filing a medical non-participation, it'll say MED for that in that column under non-participation on the student listing. And if you filed a withdrew during testing window, then that information, of course, will show up for you as well. It'll change that in progress once it's approved. So, and remember that, if we deny something, that we always tell you why we deny it. and it may be something else that you need to go do. And so you can't fix a denied student, on your student listings. You can't go back and fix that once it's denied, but you can open up a new test ticket to be able to go in and file something else if we've said, maybe it should have been another non-participation reason why than what you've done. So you can always open a new ticket, but you can't change a denied ticket. And it'll still be there. Don't worry, because like I said, there's other ways that you can go in and fix that to be able to open up a new ticket to be able to submit that. Also, edit tickets. Edit tickets, during the time when it's in progress and it hasn't been approved yet, and you forgot, oh, I forgot to add something to that ticket, you can always go in and click on edit, go find the information. You can either go to your student listing and click on it from that, or you can go into your change ticket listing and be able to change it there as well and get to your ticket. And it'll have a big button that says edit. Click on that and you'll be able to go in and add additional information before it's approved or denied. And we've gone over the red help button. Also, another key feature is that when you're going into SDRR, is that, after 20 minutes, it will log you out for security reasons. And we always want to keep that information secure because it has all of our demographic information for our students. Now, we also have an SDRR where you can export. We have where, before the testing window is over, we always want you to export it to either an Excel, a PDF, or a CSV file, and you can work in that, and be looking at that information. But remember that you don't want to make any changes on that particular. You always want to go back to the student listing, the actual student listing in SDRR, and make those changes if you export it. And then when before it closes, SDRR closes, you always want to make sure you export that, and so you have a copy of it, so it helps you when it comes to data review in the fall. Also, there's lots of filters that you can filter in SDRR on the screen. When you go in, log in and get into your student listings, you'll notice that up at the top of the screen that you'll be able to filter by, accountability, by grade level, by, accommodations, by non-participations, etc. Also, it will also tell you how many students are displayed at a time on your screen. It also allows you to go in and, also your district and school codes will be on there when you export those to either Excel, PDF, or CSV file. And then, like I said, sandboxes for staff training and practice without changing student information. So that's very important because once the SDRR goes live, you don't want to be in that practicing with that. And the same login for SDRR works for Sandbox. But you'll notice that when you're in Sandbox, it'll have the word Sandbox up at the very top to be able to help you distinguish which one you're in. And we also have links to those to be able to know which one you're in. And remember, Sandbox is for practice. And when you click on the SDRR one, that's when you're in the live session and you need to, if you need to make any changes to your demographic information in the spring. Training in Sandbox, here's the link to get to it, to be able to train your staff. It will be pre-populated, used for training purposes. It will be with dummy data. The sandbox, like I said, will open usually around the times that our rosters are open. Sometimes they will be even earlier than February because we do have access that's open. And then we also, when it'll close down and then reopen back again once it comes for spring rosters in closer to in April. Now, also for our data quality, of course, for public reporting, we always want to make sure that Infinite Campus is correct. Always, you want to make sure those are correct because that's going to be very important when we get ready to pull rosters, that your demographics and everything always pulls over, because one kid can make a difference if you don't go in and fix that during this time, either during rosters and also during data review. And we do want to say that when it comes to SDRR, we will let you know when those are going to be opening. Also, we'll let you know when we're going to be pulling that data to pre-populate any of our assessment systems. We always let you know that in a Monday DAC email or a special DAC email to let you know that as well. Now, let's talk about what we're going to be doing in the spring with SDRR. Because we've already talked about what we're doing now in SDRR, now we're going to move to our spring, getting into our 100-day students. And it's always very important that your 100-day students, if you go in and make sure your calendars are correct in Infinite Campus before we open anything, for spring. If you make sure that those are correct, that's going to pull correctly for not only spring rosters for us to be able to populate that, but it's also important when it comes to our test window collections and you're putting in your elementary, middle, and high school, that information is correct. So that way it pre-populates on the left-hand side what's the earliest date could be for each of those windows. So always keep your calendars up to date in Infinite Campus. Always make sure all the demographic information for your students are correct in Infinite Campus. Another key point is to make sure that for your IEP students that their IEP is locked when it comes to us pulling that information, so it pulls over correctly. And that if you have to get in there and make any changes once it's open, that by the end of the day, make sure that you keep that locked, because it does hit back. SDRR during rosters does hit back nightly to Infinite Campus, and so it would reflect that the next day, and you'd be like, why did that change my IEP status? Well, or several other things. So you want to make sure that you've keep those locked by the end of the day. We know you have to get in and look at those to be reviewing those throughout the year, but that's just a key important fact for that. Also, for us to be able to pre-populate your 100-day students as of the first day of your 14-day testing window. That's always important that Infinite Campus is correct and that your students are coded right in Infinite Campus. And if you have any trouble with, wanting to know some more information of, well, is there some important tools to help me with my 100 days when I get to those? There are. You'll notice that here you'll see the screenshot on your student listing page, that once you click on that and we're wanting to change your 100-day entity for your students on the student listing, it does have on that screen that in red here, it does how to determine 100-day, and that's the 100-day tool. We also have a Google form too that you can has different scenarios that you can walk through to test your knowledge. It's a 100-day quiz that will help you. Never fret that, you know, if you need some resources to help you, it's a 100-day tool, also the 100-day quiz to test your knowledge, and that 100-day quiz is anonymous. We don't ask for your name or anything for that. And then the 100-day tool, of course, is going to be very important to help, you know, where you can see the different scenarios and be able to see input some of your situations to help kind of help you with your accountability if you're having trouble with that. And always, whenever you're going to change the 100-day entity, your 100-day accountability for your students, that you want to know where that student is supposed to go. Don't just second guess and just say, well, I think I'll just put it to this district. That's not very nice. Remember, we always want to follow the golden rule, do unto others if you'd have them do unto you. And so you want to be nice DACs and BACs and put this information to the correct place. And when you go, if you're going to change accountability, you got to know the district and school that you're going to change it to, and then the reason why you want to change that. And when you're going in and change that, if it's not to you, you want to make sure it goes to the right district and that that student had been accountable to the previous district that you're wanting to send that, and the amount of days that the student had been with you. We don't want the date range, we want the exact days that the student had been with you. Then we move in, another important thing is that was for spring, is that we get into this collecting our district test windows for KSA only. That's our Kentucky Summative Assessment. That, like I said, opens on March 14th. It'll close on March 30th, so that will be your window as a district assessment coordinator. Go in and do that. We've talked about this particular slide, so let's go and see what that screenshot looks like. You'll notice that for this one is your, it'll have like the earliest date on the left pre-populated for you. That's why it's very important that I talked about your rosters being correct in Infinite Campus, and that that information pulls over from your calendars correctly, just to show that. Also, it's important that you go in and put your testing dates when those are going to start for your elementary, middle, and high school. And always when you put those in, make sure you update that and it saves that information. Anytime during that window, if you need a, you know, if you've had a board meeting and something has changed, that your calendars have changed, that you want to make sure your calendars are updated in Infinite Campus, and also if the window is still open, you can still go in during that time, the 14th through the 30th, to be able to make any changes in SDRR for your testing windows as well. Once that closes, you always, if something changes, you always want to make sure that you send that change to KD Assessment at education.ky.gov. That's our data guys, and that's their generic mailbox, and then that way they can see after it, because like I said, there's only one time that we will re-pull the data during this time, and we always let you know when we pull those in an email, and so that's why it's very important that you get this information correct. And then once that closes and everything is correct, then we'll be able to pre-populate that information for your 100-day students also, if your calendars are correct, when it comes to spring rosters late April. And like I said, you'll be able to export this. You always want to export it before, before it closes on the 30th, and be able to have that information on file for you. Rosters. Then we get into rosters. Here's a link to the applications login for rosters. This just kind of goes over the things that you can do for rosters. Of course, like I said, it'll be pre-populated from Infinite Campus with your data for spring rosters for KSA. You'll be able to file your non-participations. And remember, non-participations are different per each assessment. So be looking at that. And one thing people say, well, Chris, I noticed that, when I looked at this, that I didn't see any ACT rosters. You won't see ACT rosters. They won't open up in March because remember, ACT is one of those areas for to meet the benchmarks for post-secondary readiness. It's not the only benchmark. And so we always leave that underneath. You'll see ACT information underneath your post-secondary readiness for your students if that's one of the things that they used to meet that particular piece of it. And like I said, making sure that your demographics are as the first day of your 14-day testing window. That's what we have in SDRR. Making sure everything is correct in Infinite Campus, so that way your calendars, that way it pulls over. And then non-participations. This is very important that for our medical non-participations that you have those forms filled out correctly. With all the signatures, the required signatures on it, have that information filled out so it's easier for you to upload that into SDRR and starts the process for that. Of course, the request is for physical, mental, and emotional issues that the student is having, during the testing window. And you always want to make sure that you do keep that on file in your district office. And then you will upload it into SDRR for approval. So you have to do two things: get it filled out correctly, upload it into SDRR, make sure it gets approved, and then also make sure to keep a copy of it on file. Now, we do have what we call medical emergencies. Those are different than medical non-participations. Medical emergencies are that we have during some of our windows where students may have, broken their arm, and that's the arm that they write with. And, they normally don't get an accommodation on any of our assessments. So we have what we call a medical emergency. You can also find that medical emergency form. That is not to be uploaded into SDRR. Medical emergency means you just have to provide that accommodation for that student because that's just a temporary condition. Okay, so and those forms, all of these forms are out on our KDE website on our forms page. And you can download those and be able to fill those out electronically and be able, like I said, medical non-participations are submitted in SDRR. Medical emergencies are not. Those are filled out and kept on file in your district office. Now, we have some important IC resources that help you to make sure everything is correct in Infinite Campus, with all of this data prior to it happening. And if you run some of these extract reports, they'll be able to help you both with IEPs, your alternate assessment. Make sure your alternate assessment students are pulling over correctly, making sure that your English learners are pulling over correctly. We also have, just kind of reiterate again, even though dropout is already done by this time, I always give you that resource just to kind of help you, further, next year for dropouts. And then also for your cohort to make sure that your students are pulling for cohort, current cohort, and link to those are on this particular page. It's very important that you utilize these. in Infinite Campus, these reports, because it'll make your life easier when it comes to your data being correct in Infinite Campus, and then pulling over to SDRR. Now, I told you there are some things that you can change in SDRR. And then there's things that you have to change in Infinite Campus. And you'll notice a lot of your demographic information of your students that has to be done in Infinite Campus. If you forget and you go to try to change that in SDRR, it will give you a pop-up that says, hey, you have to go and change that in Infinite Campus. And then there are fields that you'll be able to change for SDRR, and that you're making any annotations. Anything that happens during testing, you can put that in annotations, and those annotations will pull over when you go to save those and export those out to a CSV file or Excel file, etc. And then 100-day students, your 100-day students, you can go in and make any changes to those in SDRR. They're called 100-day entity students. So you'll be able to go in and update those if not. And if you don't need to make any changes, still make sure that you've looked at those. Even though we pre-populate this information for you, you always want to double check it and make sure it's correct for your 100-day students. File any non-participations, and also request any accommodations for your IEP or 504 students. Now, you'll see on the screen is the KDE data requests. So for example, if you made the changes in IC and except IEP and it's not reflected in SDRR by the next day, you want to contact KDE data requests. That's our Infinite Campus general mailbox, and they'll be able to help you with some issues that is happening in Infinite Campus. Also, we talked a lot about, your helpful hints about, your students for, keeping the IEP locked and current. But another thing is making sure that you have a current IEP in Infinite Campus, and that the student had been using those accommodations appropriately throughout instruction. If you have any questions about if an IEP does not reflect the next day, and you've went in and changed that, or you've locked it and it's still not pulling the information correctly into SDRR, then you want to contact Amy Patterson in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. Now, same thing happens if you've got issues with your EL students. How come your EL students? Well, we try to troubleshoot and give you, make sure that, for your students to pull over correctly, they have to be marked as EL. They also have to have another language other than English. And they also have to have, at least on their EL tab under program participation, at least one instructional accommodation marked, and it needs to be more than just one, or for that student, and that's the minimum that has to. And you also want to make sure that your assessment accommodations are also marked way before testing. And you want to make sure you have at least one program services typed. What type of service is the student getting? And sometimes parents will decline services. Even though parents have declined or refused services, the student still is an EL student. They still have to take all of our state required assessments. And their program, they still have to have a program services plan, a current one. And then that teacher, if a parent does decline services, that that regular teacher is providing those services in the classroom and those accommodations throughout. So that way that student can get it on any of our assessments. Now, we also have our rosters. You'll notice that for our roster dates and activities that we always have that. That's very important to have, to kind of, go over all of these things all on one page. You'll notice that when it's going to open for district test windows, and when it's going to close. It'll also, when it's going to open for spring rosters, kind of gives you a hint of too that it always closes at 5 p.m. Usually SDR closes at that time, but before that it'll close for new tickets at noon on those dates, so that's very important. And we've went over the things that you can do in SDRR and making sure everything is correct. Also, you want to make sure that you do go over the resources. That's going to be important for you to know and be able to get to, because for the I need help, you're going to have that. You're going to have not only the I need help button, but all of these things are also underneath the I need help button. You'll have the 100-day tool, the 100-day quiz to help you with your 100-day accountability. Also, for your cohort students, you have a cohort tool, you have the sandbox for training, and then also you have the step-by-step instructions for marking accommodations and for your 100-day students. Also, how to request non-participations. And then also there will be screencasts to go with those step-by-step instructions are under development and will be released later on to help you with this information once it opens in the spring. And then also we will have sessions for DACs and BACs on SDRR functionality during spring rosters. So we will send that information out closer to time, and you all can click on it. You'll have a link to a Teams meeting and be able to get on with us, and we'll walk through any type of functionality of SDRR. Now, we will not be able to, at that time, to be able to look at individual student changes, so that has to be done privately, because we'll have more than one or more districts on that particular session during the spring rosters. So just come on, and if you want us to walk you through any of these type of how to mark accommodations, how to change a 100-day entity, how to request non-participations, we can walk you through those particular steps during that time as well. So be prepared for that. Also, we have this particular resource, this video, to kind of help you get prepared, and some important dates and things like that, and the functionalities of it. And like I said, just let us know if there's anything we can help you with. There's this recording as well as other recordings for our DAC, February DAC trainings, for all of our other types of assessments and things like that that go on for the February DAC trainings. And then also we have the Q&A sessions that we will be hosting. And here's all of our dates for those and where they're going to be. And then this just kind of goes over when we do our hybrid, our February DAC hybrid Q&A sessions. At those locations that we will be going over these topics. And what it'll be is we won't be doing any type of training. You'll just, that's what the videos are for. And then you'll come and be ready to ask any questions that you have about each one of these during those particular Q&A sessions. And then here's our contact information for our office. You'll notice that we do have new staff that we've added to our office. We want to welcome Kristen Roseberry, who is our newest consultant who is doing accommodations. And then, of course, all of our others who have been on here who will be more than willing to address anything that you have about any of our assessments And then also our general mailbox, we of course we have DAC info, and then also for general questions if you have, and specific ones you can email any one of us. We'll be more or call our number and be able to we'll be able to help you through that. So hopefully this has helped you and has prepared you for some of the things that are coming up with SDRR, and like I said, we'll have communications coming up soon for you, and as these things get closer to time. And I do want to let you know that when it comes to our district collection windows, that starting in March the 14th, that we will pull from that information from Infinite Campus to pre-populate that. So you want to make sure that by that at March 3rd that you have your information correct and your calendars are correct, so that way that information will pull over in SDRR. And we'll have additional pulls that we will send out as it gets closer to our spring rosters. So thank you all so much, and thank you all for everything you do, and have a wonderful day, and thanks again.